We're in the part of the process where, again, I'm just going to recap what we've done so far. We started out with me recording an idea. The idea gets, say like that's the demo. The demo gets arranged and fleshed out, and then we record the guitars. We mic the amps, we do all the stuff. We
drums, guitars, bass.
Drums first.
The main rhythm guitars and bass.
Yeah, the rhythm section gets done.
Yeah.
It comes to me after I get, after everything is edited. All the drums are edited, the rhythm guitars are finished, thank God, the bass is tracked, and we have some idea of a rhythm section for a song. At that point, I don't necessarily know what the melodies are going to be. I don't know what the guitar solo is going to be. I'm not even sure if I like this form of the song, and so I'm going to play with all that stuff, and I usually take a few days with each song and listen to it 300 times once I've put in all my guitar solos, my musical interludes, my passages, my counter melodies, whatever it is that I feel like I overdo it. I write too much stuff. I don't label anything. I make a mess of things. Again, I'll lop out huge sections of songs, and then I contact poor Ulrich and I make him listen to what I've got, and he doesn't know what he's listening to, because the mix at that point is just crazy. And I say, make this sound good, or I'll hurt you. And he takes the files home, probably has a good cry, and then gets into them. And this is what you do.
Because I know I'm going to get hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah. So at this point, I get like a whole slew of files that looks a bit like this. And as you can see, there's the song really is here, like that long, and there's extra stuff in the back, and there's
that's where I'll
grayed out
parts.
Inactive tracks.
Yeah.
There's a couple of missing ones that some went haywire, but it's no big deal. It's not going to harm us today, because they'll be on a subsequent session. So now I get to make sense of this, and basically I just have to diligently go through it. With the Doomstar Requiem, one thing that I didn't have to deal with was chasing edited arrangements.
Yes, because we were... now the session that Ulrich has open right now is a song called Blazing Star, which was a single from the 1 hour long rock opera special called The Doomstar Requiem, which is Metalocalypse, but a rock opera version with a 50-piece orchestra, and there's no spoken parts. Everything is set to music. It was a fun experiment that I really wanted to try, and I really enjoyed doing it. And within this experiment, I was locked into I think a 44.5-minute time format with commercials and everything. I had to make it, maybe there's a little bit of play, maybe 15 seconds, maybe I can buy 30 seconds from the network, whatever it was that I tried to get. I started out with a 52-minute demo, a one whole track of a song that is the whole thing with, brass parts in the beginning and all this different stuff. There was another thing that happened, and in between me making Ulrich and myself re-recording the guitars, tracking Gene Hoglan, doing the bass, and doing all the vocals, because we had a whole bunch of different vocalists coming in, including Mark Hamill, Jack Black, Malcolm McDowell, Rhea Yarbrough,
Victor Brandt.
Bear McCreary's wife is an amazing singer who sang. Bear McCreary, who is the, you know him as the guy who's won an Emmy for different things. He's a TV composer who is very accustomed writing for and conducting a 90-piece orchestra, and he has done that on TV before. And he and I are friends, and he's done Battlestar Galactica. He's currently doing The Walking Dead. Very talented guy, really nice guy. Great sense of melody and great sense of harmony. And there's some stuff that we both kind of interlock in musically in certain spaces. And I said, before I do this project, I would like to see how much it's going to cost, and if I can possibly get whatever amount of orchestra I've got, how much would it cost to do X, Y, and Z? And basically what I found out is that it costs $36,000 to get 15 minutes a 50-piece orchestra. So how do I parse that out over, how do I use that in certain spaces and really accentuate it in some places, and don't use it here and just use band, then use orchestra, then use band, then use orchestra, and then and all that stuff. So so he sat down, he took my my melodies and my harmony, and I made sure everything was in the right the right keys for the right instruments, because I use the Contact orchestra thing. What is it called? Do you know what it is?
No, I don't.
It's Contact. It's the Garriton Personal Orchestra. That's what it is.
Okay.
Now that's got some really good sounding brass, and I really like the French horns, and I use that often on the TV show. And I'll use the samples. So I wanted a lot of brass. I wanted Wagnerian brass at the top of this whole thing, which I thought would end up being the main theme in the single as well. And we went to a secret location where we could record cheaper, and no one would get in trouble. And we recorded all this, the brass, the strings, and Bear took my stuff, and he added counter melodies, and he added glissandos and all these amazing things. And he took my stuff and made it sound very, very, very cool. And I mean, it sounded good. In my defense, I had a lot of stuff beaten out, and I had really strong melodies and stuff. But he has a bucket load of techniques that I don't have.
Took it over the top.
And he took it over the top, and he, like I said earlier, what I want out of a person that I'm working with is take my idea and please beat it and make it cooler. And he did that and then some. So, in this whole Doomstar Requiem, we had recorded the stuff. Bear's whole team had taken the 50-piece orchestra and done a submix, like a stereo submix of the brass and a stereo submix of the strings. And then I think there was a
tuned percussion. We'll look at that in a minute.
Yeah, we're looking at all that stuff.
That's the stuff that's missing out of this session. It's in the other session.
Right.
But yeah, that's part of what's coming together. What happened with the Doomstar Requiem, basically my studio or my session was like the hub. And we had drums in there, we had all the voiceover acting was on there.
Yeah.
And basically we started compiling things like Bear, the orchestra stuff would show up at my house and we'd put it in there. I would send you stuff and you would have it too to work with. But
yeah.
like the
central
home,
hub
this was the home.
Gathering.
This was the home. This is where everybody came. And then your stuff would show up, and so this was the session that had everything in there, and it just kept getting built up and built up and built up.
So, and no other place in this whole Doomstar Requiem do we really, actually at the very end, the very, very last piece of music, like the rescue sequence, the chase sequence, and I knew that I was going to take part of that, and I was going to make a single out of some of that music. I was going to take the intro theme, what I think is the Doomstar theme, make that the chorus, take a bunch of riffs, and then add new sections into it, and then have Gene play to that whole thing. So we've got a full band, which takes up what? If this is the stereo, the spectrum of sound, we're pretty much at the hilt, and then we're going to somehow squash that and add another whole spectrum of sound, which is a 50-piece orchestra. So luckily, I don't have to deal with it. I can go home and take a nap at this point, and this is where Ulrich comes in.
This is what I do. Basically, I go through all these tracks that I get from Brendan, and later on the orchestra stuff. The orchestra stuff is relatively easy because they're just stems that span the whole song, and there's not much editing involved because they take care of that in the house. And frankly, we couldn't have done any of it ourselves, I'm very sad that I didn't get to go witness the making of that. But in all reality, they spent a good 3 or 4 weeks preparing, and then a couple of days recording, and then another 2 weeks of submixing.
Well, it was one day of recording.
One day of recording.
They ended up doing some pretty interesting stuff. They, because I was there in the room, it was a gigantic recording place, and it just sounded amazing. And I got to stand in the room when there were like 12 French horns blasting out at full double forte these themes that I wrote, and it was really cool. And they had a copyist there making sure that everything was in key, and making sure, and then Bear was conducting it and all this great stuff. And it sounded really cool, and they were playing 2-track, and they were playing 2-hour tempo. So they all had their, I don't know if they had clicks. I think conductor had click track.
Probably. Yeah.
So he could conduct and keep everybody in time, and their time was great. And but it was downbeat is at 9 o'clock. Click downbeat. First song go,
Mm-hmm.
and we had it like from 9 o'clock until 3 o'clock, with a break. And we had to get everything. We had to get everything we wanted to get. And there were some things like, hey, we may not get this far. So do you want to do this or do you want to do that? This is the amount of time we paid for. We can't go over.
Yeah,
These
yeah.
people all go home or they get overtime. And I can't afford that.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
I'm actually financing this stuff.
Sure, yeah.
This is the first time I've ever done that. But I thought, how often am I going to get a chance to work with an orchestra, to be able to put a song out and do this whole thing? This is it, probably. So so that was that thing. And then they spent some time prepping and doing their own submixes of the stereo stuff, and then bouncing it down to stems of each section.
Yeah.
Right. And then we had some stuff. We had we had one guy. We didn't have any winds, and we had one guy who did all the winds by himself and would multi-track his own winds in his own studio. So he would do his flutes, he would do his piccolo stuff, and I think he may have done some clarinets and some other kind of reeded instruments.
Sure.
And they do show up on some of the songs. You can
Yeah.
hear some reeded stuff. And then I think we used samples for maybe some pizzicato stuff from like the violins, and I think we maybe used a couple samples for Glock and spiels and stuff like that, which are pretty good. And you can get away with that, and
sure.
they won't know that it's not a big thing.
Yeah, and if there's one thing that's not real and mixed in with all the other stuff that's real, you can kind of
You can really sweeten
blend,
the track by
yeah.
having some real stuff and some not real stuff. But for the most part, all the stuff that was orchestral was very much a real
Yeah.
orchestra being
Yeah.
played by amazing players and conducted by a great conductor who just knows his way around this thing. So, so that's how that happened. That was the part that you missed. Why didn't you come? You should have come.
I was busy editing tracks.
What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so basically, I get to sit here and go through all of Brendan's edits. We've touched on that a little bit, and it's very tedious because, this track, Audio 2, I get to go find out what that is.
That? Yeah.
Oh, okay, it is a vocal,
It's
so
a vocal.
that will be
okay.
a vocal, and the editing probably should have been over here, and I'll get to do the crossfade, and I meticulously go through everything. Not only do I do that, but I'll also start making sense of some of these things, because sometimes a vocal may end up accidentally on a lead guitar track as well, and when I start mixing, that's not really gonna fly. And so I start separating things out and pairing guitars left and right in ways that start to make sense to me. And it's a pretty tedious process, but it works, and it has to be done. And really, it's something that you should do no matter what. You have to, like, when you record, you got to go through and make sure your crossfades are,
label everything.
Label it, make sure your crossfades are okay, and so you don't have any clicks and pops, and just make sense of the whole thing. It's one thing if you're recording it yourself, and you're mixing it yourself, you kind of know where everything is at, but if you're sending it out to somebody else, it's nice to send out something organized, and we'll get into consolidating regions in a minute. But yeah, that's it's not all that exciting to do, but
Right.
you have to do it. So what happens is, we can see what we're down to. I'll open this guy up to show. Really? I'll just show you what's. Oh, is that the wrong one? Yeah. Here. See, here we got. These are some of the bare orchestra files that are sitting in here now. We have the dry brass. We have dry percussion. and we have strings, I think, tuned percussion. What else do we get? With winds, brass, and then we had everything wet. We had wet percussion, we had the wet strings, and
right. They gave us a preferred reverb that they like to use. And they also gave us a dry.
One decision that I had to make very early on was to only go for the dry, because there just wasn't enough room and space
to have the white noise of the reverb to bleed over.
Yeah, to have the space to hear the reverb even. And so, even though I ended up probably putting on some of it later, but we'll crack that one open in the next segment for the mix. So this is especially for the orchestra stuff on this song. This was orchestra reused, because this was from the intro of the whole rock opera.
Yeah.
And we flew that.
I think we flew it from the very end of the rock opera too, because I think that was in the same.
Yeah.
I think it was that, and I think we did some. We flew that in from a different part, and then we also had some stuff that was very much. The intro of this thing, I think, was specifically recorded for the single.
Yeah.
Where we had that da-da-da-da-da-da, that's big James Bond.
So you can see it's compiled. There are a couple of, as I said, a couple of missing regions because of something happened during the transfer, but this is not going to affect us when we dive into the mix, because it's in the Logic sessions.
Right.
For the purpose of what we're doing now, you can see that I started cleaning all this up.
Those are probably rhythm guitars up there.
There's a lot of rhythms. And the stuff has been cleared out in the back here. I kept the MIDI stuff around just in case.
Right. The original MIDI tracks that I think
you can see there aren't any muted regions anymore, because at this point we don't need them anymore. Like you kept them around in case you might want to keep that idea or go revisit or whatever. But at this point, there's only this guy left. And for some reason it stayed. At this point, it's important to make sure there really aren't any missed crossfades anymore. And I think at this point we also labeled everything to make sure everybody has his proper name. So, what once was audio 1 or just vocal 1 is now low lead, or they just start getting some more appropriate names. What I do before I go and export this thing, because I don't actually mix in Pro Tools anymore. I mix in Logic, and I'm a little bit of the odd man out, I think. To me, it's just a workflow thing. Pro Tools makes me stop all the time and assign things, and it kind of, it kind of just takes the flow away.
Right.
Logic is easier. You kind of just do things, and I started out mixing on SSLs and things like that, and there's a certain flow to that, and I found that that flow is more Logic oriented than Pro Tools oriented. But really, it doesn't matter which software you use. They all kind of do the same thing somehow or another.
But you find that there's a little bit of a different sound between Pro Tools and
There
Logic.
is a little bit of a different sound. I think the algorithms they use to crunch numbers for EQing stuff is just a little bit smoother in Logic, and you can kind of tell. They both have a certain sound, just like Neves and APIs and SSLs have a certain sound, and you just kind of pick the one that you like the best, or the one that works for you, or the one you're stuck with sometimes.
Sure.
That can happen too. But since we do have the option,
for the most part, once you're in Logic, you're using a lot of their plugins.
Yeah, quite a few, yeah.
And do you ever go to any outboard stuff these days?
No, I never do outboard equipment for mixing. It's all in the box.
Yeah.
But we'll touch on that in the next segment. We're
Got
just
it.
prepping now to get to that. So I just select this whole mess because I've gone through and I've crossfaded everything, but maybe I did miss something and I don't want to have any pops going on. So I just select the whole lot of it. And there's this all function up here, and by triple clicking it, or I don't know, 4 or 5, 6 times on it, it selects the whole mess of tracks. And now, because of the unused regions down there, I'll probably have to go do something real quick to make this happen, which is unfortunate, but it's what it is. Look at those. Olive Bayer. There you go. Delete those. And delete those. All right, and we're back to that. We're selecting the whole mess of it, and I'm crossfading all of it with my trusty Command F. Gets me into this, and sometimes I'm gonna do just one here of like maybe 10 milliseconds, and it says right here, adjust existing fades, and I'm gonna do a big fat no to that because some have longer crossfades for vocals, certain sections are shorter ones or whatever, or like intro and outro fades that you had done for your guitar fading in thingies. I don't want to adjust that, so I do not adjust existing fades, but we'll create new fade-ins and fade-outs, and this way, anything that didn't have a crossfade now has a crossfade, and I won't have any pops. The other thing that I like to receive in the mail, if I mix somebody else's track, or in this instance, taking it over to Logic, is I do a recorded click. It's not pleasant, and this will be a different click sound from, it doesn't matter what it is really. We have Gene like the cowbell, so this is what this is. As boring as it gets. But what that does for me, it gives me the tempo. And I, as you can see, I call it Blazing 160, which is the BPM of it is actually in the name of the click, so I don't even have to go use a beat counter or anything like that when I import it to the next session. So that's very handy thing to have, especially if there are tempo changes.
Right.
Because in Logic, you can actually make a beat map that follows tempo changes, and you don't have to go reprogram it. You don't have to go tediously go in and write bars and stuff down. Anyway, so I have a click track, and I have all the other tracks.
So you print the click track just as a guideline, just in case?
As a guide, just in case, because that's, my tempo for the song. And then you can see that the drums have already been consolidated up here, and you don't see any of those edits anymore. And that's what we want to have happen for the rest of it, because there really is there's two reasons to do this. Number one, there's no real easy way to transfer files or import Logic sessions into Pro Tools or Pro Tools into Logic sessions, or any other of these software things. So what we do is we just have every file starting at the very beginning of the song and going either to the end of where it plays or to all of them to the very same end, depending on the software. Logic only renders it only to the last place it played. Pro Tools, you can select how long you want to have them. That's one reason it's transferred into my mixing software. The other reason is, how often do you upgrade this stuff? How long is this version of the software going to be around? If I deliver this to a record label 2, 10, 20 years from now, we're not going to be able to open these sessions anymore.
Right.
So even though we've changed, like main guitar left has, 10 little audio regions in it, and they are useless if they're not sitting in somewhere on the timeline. And so having all these consolidated audio files allows us to import them into any at any time later on in the future into another software. So at this point, we'll just go in and we consolidate all these regions, and it's going to take a while, but it's not that much anymore these days because, where is it? Consolidate clip. It's always good to have the shortcuts for them, but I'll show them to you here. And because one more clip the phaser off.
By the way, I'd like to, while you're doing that, I'll give a little tip to recording guitarists and bass players out there. This is the tip that Brian Beller taught me. I don't really use it, but he says, when he was giving that same philosophy from last section where he said, the recording is you at your best. It's kind of it's a fantasy of what you would play like if you were at your absolute best. Then he said another trick you want to do when you're handing off your takes, your stems to somebody else for like maybe somebody else's recording session, is consolidate your files so it looks like you did it in one take. So there you go. You can trick people. It's a lie. It's a good tip. Consolidate. 462 takes to get this guitar solo. I did it in one.
One take, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I found that culprit. There was just one of those missing audio files. And we'll go in and we consolidate this clip. I have to make sure that we're from the very beginning of the session to the very end of it, a little more than the end, just to make sure that we're really catching everybody. And
but the idea is basically to have a beginning to end, from the start of the whole session to the very end of the whole song, of stereo or mono stems, so they can be stacked upon one another and remastered, re-exported, remixed.
You have them
if you want them. They're just there.
Yeah, but because I mean
nearly almost physically there, but
nearly almost there. It's almost like back in the old tape days when you never put on a reel of 2-inch and it told you audio 11 not found.
Right.
Because
it would always be
everything was there. If it wasn't there, it's because you erased it.
You erased it accidentally.
Either or on purpose.
You had a story about a guy accidentally erasing a tape.
There's many stories. Everybody has that story.
But you had a good story.
Some people were luckier than others. I have been very,
you don't have to
very
name names,
lucky.
but I think there was a record. There's a story you told me. Tell everyone here, because this is funny.
There's funny.
It's a funny in a horrible, horrible way, in the tragic way.
I love the guy. He was a good friend of mine, and I haven't spoken with him in a while, but I learned a lot of my assisting stuff from him. He went in and he aligned the tape machines, and what that entails is you have some tones for those who are not old school. You have some tones you play back, and you adjust the tape machine to the tones, but then you have to do the record portion of the program, which is you take a piece of tape, because you align the tape machine to the tape that you're using, and
so basically, you would have. I mean, this is an interesting thing because I think a lot of people don't know about tape, and they never are going to get their hands on one. Is that you would have a main tape machine, right? Mm-hmm. And then you would have slave tape machines, right?
Yeah,
this isn't that. But just to line up the tape.
Which story do you want?
I don't know
which story this is.
This is the story where somebody blows it. We'll talk more about it.
I'll do this one because
this one. Okay, I don't have to know how it works. Just go ahead.
Well, then you do the recording portion of the alignment, which means you have a blank piece of tape that you're going to use, and you record those tones on there from an oscillator. You adjust the tape machine, and very often you erase those tones afterwards because you don't want to hear them accidentally, because they're really loud and annoying if they come at you out of nowhere. So this fella, he recorded that. He started erasing this record pad, and went and got his coffee, thinking that record pad was, as it very often is, at the end of the reel. So once the reel runs out, it's all done and nothing bad happens. He had his coffee, and about a very short while into having his coffee, he realized that record pad was actually in the beginning of the reel, and he raced down to find a minute of a song erased. of a violin player who had since died. Is that the one? Yeah. That was not a happy day for anyone, you know. And as I said, I have erasing stories, but mine were much more benign, and
Right.
I really just.
But the action afterwards, once he realized what he did, I think that the part that I remember you telling me was that he just went to the head of the company and said,
I quit, I resigned, yeah.
I respectfully resign. He cleaned out his desk and he left,
Yeah.
which is, he fell onto his sword.
Yeah.
And that is what one must do in a major screw-up way
Yeah.
of that. And that is a crazy thing that doesn't necessarily happen nowadays.
Not the same way, it's a different
volatile,
thing. Yeah.
living, strange, magnetized piece of real thing that's actually recording stuff.
Yeah,
we
yeah.
don't get to experience that.
Yeah. All the stuff I've erased have been things that they didn't like and wanted to replace anyways. So I was lucky to have that experience of being like jolted. I had the jolt of oh my God, I screwed up so bad that I will never work in this town again. And having that feeling of going to tell them that, dude, I'm so sorry. And they'll go, that's okay, because we are not going to use that anyways. And it's like, just don't do that again. And just having that shock in your system, it makes you be like that much more careful,
There must be countless stories of people blowing it in monumental situations.
Well, especially back in the day when people used to do so many drugs while recording.
There you go.
So probably a lot of it got erased. Nobody knew about it.
Yeah. There you are. Anyway, so that doesn't happen here. We are consolidating.
We have consolidated. Look at this. It's all consolidated. And there are some empty ones in there. We don't worry about that at all.
Yeah.
So that's the point where I go, thank you very much. And I clean out any kind of unused playlists because I do not need them anymore. I clean them all out, and I then clean out all the files we don't want anymore. Select unused. I don't erase them, I just remove them. I'm sure other people have shown you all this stuff. And there they are. That's a lot of clips. There's still some of them around. Unfortunately, well, we can just, if they're still here, that means that they're stuck somewhere in a clipboard, and you just have to quit the session and open it back up again. In theory, you would only have these left afterwards. I'm not going to go through the pain of closing it and opening it back up again. But if you clear them all out and then you save a copy or I save a copy of this, and I choose, I always do 4824. That's my thing. I want to copy the audio files, and then I make a version of this somewhere. I'll just put it right there, copy of Blazing Star, bring it on, and it'll do that. And those will be the tracks that will be ready for me to import into Logic. Mm-hmm. And we'll open that thing up in a second. I'm not going to finish that because that's boring.
By the way, there's just a small thing that I think when making a record, you don't necessarily know the titles of your songs. It's just when we're playing the Galacticon thing, I think we had a nickname for that song that was called Beast Blade or something.
Yeah.
I don't remember the final names of the songs, but it was initially called Tooth Fairy.
Yes.
I just thought that was which was the name of, I think they called that.
There it is. You're looking at it.
Yeah, there it is. The Tooth
why
Fairy.
The Tooth Fairy.
Tooth Fairy, which is like the name of the serial killer in Red Dragon.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah. And
I thought it was about the Rock movie.
Yeah, Tooth Fairy, yeah. Because he used to bite people with his teeth, yeah. So that's the prequel to Silence of the Lambs.